and gentlemen, welcome to Nerd Night! That was pretty good, right?
I mean, yeah, it was okay.
Okay, well,
No,
I've
we're
got to
not
work
going
on
to do
it.
that thing where we like try to amp the crowd up, are we? No,
Not all the time? No, we are not
We are
whores for
fun.
clapping, are we?
We are
Because
fun.
we're at Nerd Night! I did it again.
See, that's why we don't do that.
That's too obvious. Okay, got it.
Yeah, okay.
All right. So, welcome to Nerd Night here at the Bearded Monk. We appreciate you all coming out for this very special event, sponsored by More Fun Comics and Games, our friends at Bearded Monk, and of course, we didn't do it. We like them a lot. So, one of the things that we do here at Nerd Night is literally like TED Talks meets drunk history and has a strange rendezvous with the Hitler channel. No, okay, no, sorry, too much. No, but less Hitler, less Hitler. Okay, sorry. There's no Hitler here tonight, guys. Sorry. Those of you that came in,
We're bosses,
sorry,
we're
check it
not
in.
dictators.
That's not happening. Okay, but so we thought we'd first introduce a little bit about Nerd Night. Allie, tell a little bit of where Nerd Night come from, because I heard it had to do with bug sex.
No.
Am I wrong?
Very wrong.
Did I read it wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Bugs having sex. I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Bird sex.
Oh, it was birds.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, no. Okay, Nerd Night, the history of Nerd Night was born out of bird reproduction. Weirdo. Sorry.
Technically
yes, do that.
accurate. Technically, nerds, help me out, accurate.
Okay.
We're not talking bird gender. Go ahead.
Birds have rights too, Sean.
And they have feelings. I respect them.
Anyway, so no. Nerd Night started in 2003. There was this dude in Boston. His name was Chris, and he studied bird reproduction. So you're not like totally wrong, but you're just kind of.
It's close. That was
Whatever.
close.
Anyway, so we started in 2003. It was basically this big giant story about. Well, no, it wasn't giant. They just needed somewhere to talk about what they learned. He went on a sabbatical and learned about birds and came back and was telling every single person about birds. And
Like
they were like,
academics
why don't you just
do.
tell 50 people about birds? And then Nerd Night was born. I mean, we had a bar with beer, just like we are. Actually, one of the rules of Nerd Night is that you're in a bar. So
Having beer. So anybody here without a beer, we're going to have the Gestapo. Sorry, so I'm going to quit it with the Nazi
yes,
jokes.
with the
That's bad.
dictators. I mean,
It's
where
not
are we
true.
going
No more
with this?
dictators. Because we're more about the bird reproduction.
We're all about birds reproducing. We all want the birds.
And by the way, if you have any cool topics that you think that you're a nerd on, because our theory is, and it's a dominant theory, it's a hypothesis actually that's being tested, everyone's a nerd about something, Allie.
I mean, I'm a nerd about birds.
I'm a nerd about comics, which is why we're here tonight.
That is exactly why we're here tonight.
That's what we got. Thanks, Allie. Welcome to Nerd Night. Little hand for Allie. Allie is technically the missing part of my brain because you handle the technical stuff and I'll do all the adulting. Whereas I'm like, hey, we're talking about nerd stuff with beer. I'm in. I'm there. And that's what we're doing tonight. So I don't know, for those of you that just walked in, we are actually have a very special evening tonight that's brought to you by More Fun Comics and Games. Today was Free Comic Book Day. Anybody get some free comics today? Oh, yes. That's because that's what you do. Because that's what you do. However, spoiler alert, since you guys are sitting here, we have some very extra special swag that if you're hanging out here by the end of the night, we're going to be distributing. And I'll let our last person tell you about that a little later. So here's a preview of the evening. Here's how we're working. This is unfolding in 3 acts. Act number 1 is me. My name is Dr. Sean Treat, by the way. And I'm actually a professional nerd. Now, when I say professional nerd, what I mean is I get paid to be a nerd. I have a PhD. So I actually studied communication studies. I specialize in rhetoric and persuasion, political communication, perhaps you've heard of it. But I also taught a course called, yeah, we're not doing that tonight. Don't make me go there. I've got a sticker on my hat you can ask about later. Dictators. But at the end of the day, my favorite course and one of the top was a Mythic Rhetoric of the American Superhero class, where yes, I made college students read comic books for college credit. And thank you. And that's exactly what their response was too. Until they went to Tim's comic store and bought all the comics, and they're like, shit, dude, this is like $300. What's going on? And I'm like, yeah, but all these cool academic books.
Average class.
No, you preach, right? I mean, $300 won't raise an eyebrow.
Oh, no.
I'm just saying, like,
$500-600.
oh, bro, I've done that. Oh no, that is no bigs. That is like the usual, right? But so again, thanks. That's right for the affirmation. It's not that much, but it's important stuff. One of the things that blew me away, and people, I'm a little older. I don't know if you've noticed, but I actually would ask my students, how many of you are comic book readers? Only half of them would raise their hands. And according to Scott, that's actually a high number, right? And the other half have never read a comic book.
And what's the name of your class?
Yeah, Mythic Rhetoric of the American blah, 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 apparently. Blow-off course, underwater BB stacking or something, right? So, but no, here's the thing that I'm most proud of. Those students who had never read a comic by the time they got out of the course, many of them, and Tim will tell you, would show up in the store and they were avid comic readers. Once you understand the power of comics, it really kind of opens doors and opens your eyes that like, wow, there are lots of possibilities of storytelling that actually TV and films are just now starting to pick up on. Because I don't know if you've heard, comics are kind of a thing. And we were talking about this at breakfast this morning, because this is no lie. I used to get beat up because I would bring comics on the playground whenever I was young in the Now you're cool, right? Now you're cool. Now it's got cultural cachet, as the kids say, and the New Yorker reports. But no, before it was like, you're in a closet somewhere. So that's why tonight's talk is really special. What I want to do as the first act is give you kind of a little backstage on who we're listening to, a little bit about the business and history of the comics, and just kind of introduce you and ease you in. It's only going to last for about 10-15 minutes, and then I'm going to bring up our main act, which is our very special guest tonight, Scott Williams. Can you guys give him a warm round of applause? So Scott and Jennifer and Ruby actually drove here. Like, this guy's like a top dog in comics. And I love that he puts his dog and his wife in a car. And you guys, they're like, we're trucking it. We're doing that. Here we come, Denton, Texas. Bring it. And so, yeah, so they've showed up here and they've very generously agreed to hang out with us, drink some beer. And Scott's going to talk a little bit about some of his work. We're going to take a brief break. So everybody can beer back up, because I did mention we are here at the Bearded Monk tonight. We're drinking beer and we're talking about nerdy things. Yes? Chin chin. So cheers to Bearded Monk and Ben. Salute. And then for our last act, we're actually going to bring up Tim Stoltzfus from More Fun Comics and Games. He's going to talk a little bit about the Denton Batman cover that I don't know if you guys heard. Actually, Scott was signing a ton of these today up on the square. And More Fun Comics is the only place in the world you can get this comic book. True story. You want to talk about limited edition, exclusive. This is it. This is the bomb. He says he's got a case in his car and there's a black market. So, Scott, let's save that for the last act. All right, so tonight one of the things that I want to do for, it's nerd night. We're all nerds, so let's get real. Like, most people on the street, they're wondering, who the heck is this guy? And I'm here to tell you that actually Scott Williams is a very special guest. This guy is actually, by the way, welcome to Denton. Denton, Texas is their first time. Give them a little hand. And thank you for doing the Denton Batman and for coming here and signing. That's also great. But he's actually a comics pro, and he's actually, as Ron Burgundy likes to say, kind of a big deal. And so I wanted to give you guys a little background on who this cat is, because you guys don't know it, but we are actually in the presence of comic books royalty, and that's the point, is after this first section, I want you guys to have a good idea what this cat does. So let's go to his pro stats. Here we go, here's the pro stats page for Scott Williams. We're all nerds, let's cut to the chase. We want numbers, we want facts, we want stats. So in case you missed it, this fella began his pro career around '86 working for Marvel Comics on the title Power Pack, but actually it was actually the what was it? The Mary, no, hold on. Hold on, I gotta go ahead. That's right, you're gonna test me. Because I have it in here. There it is, Strike Force, Morituri. Sorry, we're going through there. Sorry, spoiler alert, sorry. I know, it's totally preview. But he started off, he grew up an Army brat. He was actually, went to high school in Hawaii. We'll talk about some of his early beginnings. But some of the stuff that he's known for is actually he helped define the image style during the 1990s. And as someone who came up during that time, the house style was a hugely important idea. And Scott was completely central to this, what became like a key innovation. Like they then became the style that you would see often imitated across even all the other different comic book companies. He's an inker, but is what he's most known for. But guess what? He's also a known penciler, writer, and he's a popular cover artist. As we've had a great advantage here, he's done an exclusive cover for us, which makes it even more special because he spends a lot of his time, slaving away. I'm pretty sure you've got to go back and do some more here pretty soon. Let's take a look at some of his awards. Top hits. 1993, Will Eisner Comic Industry Awards. He was a nominee for Best Inker for X-Men. Perhaps you've heard of them. Anybody not heard of X-Men? Because you've got to get the out right now. And Wildcats, bonus points if you know them. In 2004, Will Eisner Comic Industry Awards nominee for Best Penciler Inker or Penciler Inker Team, which technically it was, for Batman on DC Comics with Jim Lee. Perhaps you've heard of this guy, right? We've heard of this guy. But also in 2012, he was a co-recipient of the Joe Sino Hall of Fame Award from the Inkwell Committee. And we'll hear a little more about this because they have a lot of things to say about who this guy is. So I just want to also say, holy look at his publication list. I was talking to somebody at the comic store today and they were like, Scott Williams, who's that? And I was like, bro, look it up. Google that. And he did, and he was like, oh my God, this guy was on Batman Hush. Oh my God, this guy was on X-Men. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the party, pal. Speaking of which, speaking of quotes, there's actually a great scene from Chasing Amy from 97, This May Be Beyond You. I actually had embedded video that we're not gonna play because, we got started late. But you guys can go back and watch the scene. What it is Jason Lee, who's also a new Denton local. He might be coming here to choke you later, by the way. I hollered at him on Twitter. We'll see if he takes it up. But there's a famous scene where Jason Lee's character actually plays an inker for the artist who is Batfleck. I'm sorry. It's that kind of night, people. Ben Affleck, of course. And so one of the people accuses him of being a tracer. Oh, you just trace over stuff. And of course, it leads to a brawl at a comic convention. And so this is actually kind of like if you ask the person on the street what's going on, and that's exactly what Kevin Smith is playing with, is like, dude, you just trace over other people's artwork. Like, what's up with that? And I'm here to tell you, as somebody that's been a longtime comics fan, the more that you get into comics, the more you understand the value of this team production and what everybody brings to the table. For example, here we have a pencil job that's been done by Jack Kirby. And so this rough sketch was actually retouched and redone and then interpreted here by Scott. And I just want you to check out how, you have this kind of base design with the planet underneath and a couple of lines and of course the figure in bold. But notice how then all the Kirby crackle, that's totally a thing. And that has been interpreted. All the iconic elements of Kirby's artwork across his entire span of his career are actually brought into this piece in order to help really kind of enhance the experience of it, to bolden it, to make it pop. And what it does is it then provides an actual interpretation. So one of the quotes that I have up here is, "The vision is the art of seeing what is invisible to others." And to me, that's one of the things that happens whenever you're having to look at somebody's original artwork and then look at people then bringing in their own kind of interpretations in game. Are we doing bear crawls now? Is bear crawls a thing? Are there bears? Okay, we're all doing this at the break, by the way. We're all doing bear crawls. But this idea of vision, because I feel like Scott has a unique vision that he brings to comics, and there are plenty of people that agree. But I'm all about show and tell. Let's have a look. Let's roll tape. Here's an actual, and Scott, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be, but I'm not. And this is actually some penciling done by Jim Lee.
That was
a rough
For X-Men that
that wasn't used.
At some point you decided it wasn't working.
Right.
And that's as far as it got.
That's as far as Jim Lee's original art got. And so what happened was it was then released into the wild. Somebody bought it and then they commissioned you.
Like original art.
That's right.
Before a finished piece, and this was a way for them to be able to
Right. Right.
art unfinished.
But it's totally unfinished. Dude, it's mostly unstarted. I mean, there's like literally, I can't even tell. Can you tell that the beast is down in the corner? I could just see a Cheshire smile grin. I mean, there's just the barest of tracings of what's going on here, right? So what happened was somebody then commissioned Scott to come and complete it, to fill it in, and to really kind of make this piece of art pop. And so what we see is the after picture. And this is where Scott then comes in and he completes the piece. And it makes all the difference. This is why whenever you look at a finished piece of art, and this is before coloring or anything like that, this is, sorry, did I go back? No? We doing this? We doing this? We're doing that. We're here. Sorry, I hit the buttons. Sorry, I do that every once in a while. But here's where you get like at least an idea of what's involved in the scope of like what he's bringing to the game. And this is a piece of artistic interpretation, and Scott is an artist. So this is one of the things that for a lot of my research here, we have a cover of Draw Magazine where you actually interviewed by. It was Manly. That's right. So Manly actually interviews, so you got two guys talking shop. And it's great because you guys get into like tools of the trade, things like that. It's absolutely amazing. But I mean, one of the things that comes out in this is that you've got a couple of pros too that are coming through a period where I was telling you guys I got, being beat up for bringing comics in a lunchbox. But now we've also got a period of where art has gone through huge changes, not just from like the kind of paper and production elements, but also like just the equipment you use. It's not just a, ink and brush and pen. Now you've got an entire new tool set that gets brought out, and Scott's really been an innovator across the line in kind of cementing these kind of new technologies and bringing them into comics in a way when there are a lot of other people that were, to be fair, a little slow to adapt, maybe. I mean, or changes happen; they happen fast, and so this is definitely one of the things that Scott brings to the table. I actually have a great quote here from someone that is he's a great inker, and so for people who follow art and know these inkers, they're going to recognize. Aaron Soud actually was interviewed for a book called The Damn Book of Interviews. And isn't that a great title, right? He talked about Mark Silvestri was having a talent search, so I entered as an inker since everyone was trying to be a penciler. I thought, hey, this looks easy, I can do it. No, much harder than it looks, exclamation point. I was inking on vellum with micron pens, so I would have to go over each line 4 or 5 times to get the thick to thin line that Scott was getting with a nib or a brush. Because I sat down and spent 4 days on one page trying to make it look like Scott Williams. But I guess my samples look good enough because I won the talent shoot and they flew me down to San Diego. But this idea, hey, it looks easy, but then he sits down to actually do the job and it's like, oh my God, this is like crazy work. So I want to read this excerpt because to me, you can hear from me and you can hear from others, but let's hear from some of the peers. The Inkwell Awards was an incredible write-up. And one of the things in the write-up that they talk about is that Scott is himself a consummate craftsman. Like here's a direct quote from this. There are many craftsmen and women in the comic book inking community who do exceptional work in the industry. Then there are a few who reach a status of a master, the ones that influence others on a wide scale due to their sheer talent and innovation. And that artist is Scott. And that is what Scott does. Just in conversations with him and when you read interviews and you're gonna hear people in the industry, he has literally influenced a generation of artists, designers, and even comics pros themselves go back and reference the work. So he is that guy. And that's exactly who we have here today. So if you would, please give a warm welcome to Scott Williams. Scott, can you join me up here? You can get down on it. You just have to be like a rock star. Like,
I can do that.
right
We're tied
there.
up. All right, we're good.
Right?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wow.
So Scott, welcome to Denton, first of all.
Thank
I mean,
you.
we really appreciate you being here. And one of the things I'm super excited about is actually, because like literally, ask Mike and this team, we've got PopNerdTV, they've been here. I've been talking their ears off all day about, I'm so tickled that this guy is coming to Denton, he's sharing his work, and he's here to sign it. So we really appreciate
if ever
this.
there was a day to sort of marinate yourself in comics, it's Free Comic Book Day,
Man,
right?
Free Comic Book Day is it, yeah. That is the day to do it. So, well, let's start off with like the underhand and slow pitches, because you grew up an Army brat, you wound up landing in Hawaii for high school, right? And you met who? Wills?
I did. I met Will Spertasio. I was a senior in high school. He was a freshman, probably, and I don't know how many of you guys know who Will Spertasio is. He's gone on to have much success with a lot of different titles for Marvel, DC, Image. He helped create Wetworks for Image. When X-Men was kind of blowing up in the early 90s, he was doing a super high profile run on X-Men sort of concurrently with Jim and I on the other X-Men book. But anyways, he was a shy, quiet freshman in high school, but worlds of talent. And one of the things that I tended to do was gravitate towards those guys that could draw really well, because as I was a senior, he's a freshman, I'm a senior, he's got 10 times the talent that I could ever hope to have. So
you guys had an artist fight club
we
in Hawaii?
we did not have the full-on fight club, but we definitely
a draw club.
Sort of,
we don't talk about draw club.
We definitely like use each other for inspiration, and he would show up with these incredible pages. And again, as an artist, one of the things you're trying to do is you're growing. You seek out sources of inspiration. You seek out those things that sort of scratch that creative itch. And the fact that the guy was standing right next to me in class and was completely unassuming and made it look easy.
Right.
It definitely made me wonder, what am I getting myself into? Because he's making it look easy and I'm struggling the whole way. But anyways, he's the guy that I met in Hawaii, which sort of cemented my desire to get into comics. And later, he ended up, you're talking about me moving around and being a military brat. He was in San Diego, was just starting to get work. He called me out and said, come on down, I need some help. I need some assistant work. Hey, I can do that. And that, sometimes we talked about this morning at breakfast. Talent is great, drive is important, and occasionally you need a break. You need someone, you need a foot in the door, and he was kind of a foot in the door. It's a little bit of luck. There's always, and it doesn't even matter if it's comics, whatever career you're in, a lot of times you've got all these things going for you, but sometimes you need a little bit of luck. And my little bit of luck was the fact that here's a guy that I knew who was just getting himself situated into comics. He needed some help. Boom, come on out, come help me out. I come out. That opened the door, and that's sort of what kind of got me.
But he's also your kind of nerd, right? I mean, because that's the thing. Nerds gravitate to other nerds.
I don't know any comic. I don't know any comic book creators who aren't nerds. So it's almost redundant. I mean, seriously. I mean,
this is an oxymoron.
Because we talked about. There's another thing we talked about this morning is in all the years that I've been doing comics for 30 plus years, and in all those years I've only met one guy who actually made a living in comics who didn't have that nerd status, who wasn't actually a nerd fan. Or nerd
super exception,
down to,
right?
down to his core. The rest of us, we all got into comics because we were fans, we collected them, we read them, we geeked out over them.
Right.
I would go to San Diego Comic-Con and park myself in front of the various artists and watch them draw and just go, so it's part and parcel of the job description.
Now you guys had a teacher, an art teacher, because there's also these inspirations,
where do you
right?
pick this stuff
Mr.
up?
Mr. Inhofe?
Holy crap, Mr. Inhofe. How do you know this?
I'm asking you.
You're doing serious research. Yeah, no, again, talk about inspiration. And Mr. Inhofe, who none of you know, but is a great guy. I have no idea what became of Mr.
Let's Google
Inhofe. But
that.
we all have sort of mentors. We all have people that meant something to us on a career path, on a personal path. He was that teacher that Wilson and I had that was super chill, was super cool, had the wherewithal and understanding that 95% of the people that are in high school art classes are taking it because it's a cruise class, right? Easy A, right? As long as you show up and participate at some sort of minuscule level, you'll at least pass, if not like ace the class.
Right.
So he was thrill with Willis and I, because we were serious. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we had arrived or we were all that, but we were serious. We took the art part of it serious. And sure enough, he was, yes, Mr. Inhofe was the guy that, at that young age, that kept the fires burning.
Which that's an interesting contrast, because then you go on and you go to the University of Hawaii, right on?
Yeah, got a degree in drawing and painting. Yeah,
but you're keeping your comics interest totally
right.
secret and
Mr. Inhofe, the high school teacher, was so thrilled to have people in his class that were into drawing and people that he could sort of himself feed off of and sort of groove on the fact that he had like these serious students. Then I go to University of Hawaii, and it's a completely different ballgame. I knew at that point that I wanted to get into comics as a profession, but I also began to sense real early on that you keep that to yourself. Okay, if you're a comic fan, it's not that it's a nerd factor.
Yeah, you don't
it's that it's
advertise
not
it.
serious.
Right.
You are not
right.
taken seriously.
It's not real art.
It's not real art. Real art is something else. We won't get into what real art is, but real art.
We might.
Yeah.
We might get into that tonight.
And I'll go sit down over there and drink my beer while you get into it.
That's fine.
So, knowing all along that I wanted to get into doing this,
Right.
I would take life drawing classes or lithography classes or photography classes, and I would sort of hide my intentions from the professors at the college level. And they all kind of said, yeah, you got a little something going on. You got some talent here. And none of them were nerds. None of them were comic fans. So in some ways, what I was bringing to the table was stuff they were very unfamiliar with. So not only did I have whatever level of talent that I had, but I was actually doing something that they kind of hadn't really seen much of.
So it's kind of interesting.
So in their mind, they're
Yeah.
thinking, hey, this is kind of fine artsy, kind of something's going on here. And in my mind, I'm thinking Jack Kirby, I'm thinking Neil Adams, I'm thinking, all the guys that.
And they're like, oh, Kirby, is he in the Louvre?
Yeah, right, exactly. They have no clue. And I just kept it that way. But we managed to scratch each other's back. They encouraged me, and I never let on to them that I was actually going to be a crushing defeat for them. So just kept it to myself.
Or a big win, you never know.
Or a big win. As far as I'm concerned, it was a big win. But.
So here's some of the early stuff. So I did this weird little pastiche here, right? So there's How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Which I read and absorbed and
Who
absolutely.
does not have a copy of this? I bet we have far fewer
If you're a
people,
comic,
right? I mean, come on.
if you're an aspiring comic
We've
book
all
artist,
tried.
that's a classic. Yeah.
We've all tried.
Yes.
But then there's Strike Force.
The Strike Force Mortuary was
Tell me about that.
That was a big one. That was, again, now once I sort of got in that door, used Wills as my fulcrum, my leverage point to actually get in, and started establishing myself and showing my work to editors. At some point, I was offered a series, and Strike Force Mortuary was one of those series, and it was the first one, and it was the first sort of and relatively unknown. Obviously, it's not the X-Men, it's not
It was the
Justice
Guardians.
League.
It was the Guardians of the Galaxy of its
best,
day, right? I mean,
at best, it was a new series, but it was well thought of. It's considered a minor,
No, it's
very
actually-
minor classic now.
No,
We're
no.
talking very minor classic, but
No, seriously, bring it back.
but it taught me the discipline of doing monthly work, which is its own beast unto itself. I mean, aspiring to do comics is one thing. You don't really quite know what you're getting yourself into until you sit down and do it for a period of time where you start to understand the disciplines required to do a monthly book. And the deadlines, they're not particularly fudgeable. They come up once they come up once a month, and it creates levels of stress and endurance and sleeplessness and all those
swear words.
and a few of
Swear
those
words,
too,
right?
absolutely. But again, we probably had too long of a breakfast this morning because there's something else that we talked about, which is I would have done it for free. I absolutely would have done it for free because being the nerd that I was, the idea of actually doing comic books, published comic books, and being able to go to my local comic book store and pull
That's
up,
me.
That's me right there.
Yeah.
That's my name, right? And I could pull it up and look
Hey,
at
Mom.
it. And, yeah, right? And so it's a lot of there's a lot of work that is required to get to that point. So the fact that I had actually gotten to that point, I swear to God, I would have done it for free. And this was sort of the Strike Force Mortuary was the first step into that world of doing comics on a regular basis, and that was probably about 30 years ago, and I've been doing it steadily ever since. So yeah, it's relatively unknown as far as what's on my bibliography, but it's an important one for me.
No, that was one of the ones that was formative,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
Power Pack worked on that, but I wanted to show like some of the early work here, right? Here's I think that's Power Pack number 1. Yeah, that's number
Yeah.
1. And then you've got Punisher War Journal.
Punisher War Journal,
right?
and the Punisher War Journal was the first time that I worked directly with Jim Lee, and obviously a lot of the success that I have had throughout all the years, especially from about 1988 on, to one degree or another, has revolved around the artists that I've worked with most closely. And Jim, by far, has been the most prolific. I've done a lot of stuff with Wilson, other guys, Mark
Right.
Silvestri, and a bunch of other artists, but Jim, by far, is sort of the gorilla in the room as far as who am I best known to be associated with. And Punisher War Journal was our first sort of foray into working together. And he was struggling. He was like an up and comer
that's right,
at that
yeah.
time. I mean, everybody.
All you guys were.
Everybody's, yeah, absolutely. Everybody was starting. And I was actually, by the time he came in, I was actually already more established. I was not a star, whatever that means, by any stretch of the imagination, but I had already been working for Marvel for a couple of years and had been established and was becoming one of their go-to guys. If they had something interesting coming up, they'd give me a call and say, would you do this, would you do that? And then at some point, got a call about doing something with this guy, Jim Lee, who I really didn't know that was. Okay, sure, yeah. And
Send him my way.
Send him my way. And we started doing a couple issues of Punisher War Journal, and it was clicking pretty good. It wasn't like, I don't think it was, I don't think all points bulletins were out, as far as like it being a dream team supreme, but it was okay.
Well,
it was
it's
good.
also a first meeting.
It was a first meeting.
Any first meeting in the
and
comic
it was
books
formative.
is always like,
Yeah,
you're trying to get a feel.
It's like a musical duet. You don't always kind of know when this guy is zigging and you're zagging and quite how to make it work. But
yeah. So to be a professor, just for a second, like one of the things I wanted to call attention to in the middle slide is one of the things that Scott actually brought to the inking table is, and forgive me because I don't know if it's derogatory or not, but they call it like Morse code, where they talk about it as Morse code inking, the ... So the idea is that in the inking style, there was a lot more of, as he's covering some of these artists. Let's go to the next one. You're going to see in some of these, because again, these are some lesser known works. These are yours, right?
Yeah, this is
right.
Yeah,
I know it is.
Mark
But
Silvestri,
yeah, this is Silvestri.
Uh-huh.
And so this work I really loved, and the reason is because when you look at the bartender's glass, chest hair, the neck shadowing, instead of it having like lots of like crazy hashtags and things, it's this really kind of elegant line work that just makes that suggestion that has different thicknesses, and then it's like these ... dashes that then are used to then provide a certain type of texture, a certain type of atmosphere, but also like foregrounding and backgrounding. So you're experimenting.
I was experimenting, and I was also taking it upon myself to try and impose my will.
To interpret a bit.
And to interpret,
perhaps,
but there was also, these guys, most of the guys that I work with they either were or turned out to be sort of top-notch artists. And they had already established terrific storytelling and or structural drawing and whatnot. So the bones were all there. So my only chance to sort of shine was to create a visual language with the ink. And I think by this point, by early 90s, I had developed a solid enough reputation based on the work that I had done that they could trust me. So a lot of these guys, to their credit, and we can get back to this later, but to their credit, they really allowed me to play. And not every penciler is comfortable enough in their own skin to allow someone to come in on top of them and create ciphers and visual language that is sort of unique to the inker, that actually different than maybe what they would do themselves if they were penciling and inking their own work. They allowed me the freedom, and you sort of as the as the process goes through from writing to penciling to inking, the level of freedom starts to diminish somewhat because it's starting to get more and more cemented as it goes along. So for me to be able and allowed to have the freedom to do what I did, credit to them. But yeah, I was trying to develop something very distinctive and a visual language that would be sort of brand recognizable, so that even if I'm inking Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri or Wills or whoever, that there'd be telltale aspects to it, a stylistic aspect to it that would be clearly observable, and someone could say, oh, Scott Williams inked this. Oh, and
Right.
Scott Williams inked it, even though it's like different artists, different pencilers or different storytellers.
So is that how Homage Studios started? I mean, because you were inker for several of them, like
Yeah.
trying to. Is that what brought you guys together, or did that emerge organically, or did you guys make
it was
conscious?
somewhat, it was organic from the standpoint that you had artists, and by definition, comic book artists in particular, tend to work in an isolated fashion, and it gets to be a bit of a drag just being completely by yourself, especially at that age. I mean, we're talking in our early mid-20s, right? You want to socialize, you want to hang out, whatever, and to a large extent, you end up working in complete isolation. So, moving to San Diego, starting to work with Wills. Hey, let's get together. I've got a loft up in my condominium. Let's work together. Okay, so now we got a little micro team of me and Will. So you could call us a studio, call us whatever you want. We were just a couple of lonely guys that wanted to work together and have fun and stuff. And then Jim Lee comes in. He's doing some work with Wills. Then I start doing some work with him. And at some point, he just starts to catch fire. And at that point, I'm going, okay, dude, you're not going anywhere. We're going to be like this little group here. We're going to be a team. And we all agreed to it at the same time. It's like, yeah, we all have similar interests. It's working. We have similar interests. We like the same art. We like the same movies. We like the same source material. In fact, we like the same source material so much that sometimes we sort of jokingly homage it. And so, hey, let's call ourselves Homage
And you guys are
Studios.
sharing stuff all the time, right? Because you're
sharing
also like, oh, look at this, and look at that, right?
And we're pushing each other too. This is when you're on the positive trajectory of learning and enthusiasm and exuberance, and it's this constant push, and it's something that you can't always do when you're by yourself. But then you start getting like the energy of multiple people all in one place, and especially like guys who are driven, motivated to do great comics, at least the types of comics we like. We liked superhero comics. We liked cool pictures. We wanted it to just, we weren't creating socially aware comics. We weren't doing anything but the stuff that we were fans of. And all of us had read comics and were nerds and liked the same source material, the same comics, the same artists. And even though we didn't end up drawing or inking like those guys who came before us, they were still our source material, and we all came from the same place. So therefore there was sort of this,
dude, it's like a neighborhood vibe.
Yeah.
Like you guys literally formed your own club.
Yeah, we did. And then at some point we decided, okay, we kind of got a penciling and inking thing going here. We could actually bring in a colorist. So then we brought in our buddy Joe Chito, who did some color work for us. And so now all of a sudden we had a colorist in-house. And then at some point we could bring in some assistants, and then could kind of start a business going, and then bring in a letter. So it was like this very kind of step-by-step process as we would grow, and we'd start generating this cachet, this comic book kind of known quantity amongst the publishers and the editors. They would kind of know that they could count on us to produce this certain quality of work and become self-sufficient and start bringing in equipment. And so, I know where you're going.
So, no, but that's great, because you're creating your own super team in a lot of ways, where you're like, oh, you want a product finished, because this is also one of the things that Scott's known for, is you are and you can beat this later in post-production, you're a mother with a deadline. You make it happen. I mean, that's one of the things you became known for, is not only are you doing it fast, because here we got a couple of very different styles here. Perhaps, can anybody tell me the difference between Wills and Lee here?
It's a little fuzzy, so let's not hold it to this.
Touche.
The audio quality is
Touche. But the idea of creating a unifying style, right? This idea of a house style is something that DC and Marvel, the idea is that, and this is what I had zero knowledge of when I was collecting comics. I would pick up a comic and I'd be like, oh, look at this. It's a person in cape. But then even later, I would have like a favorite artist, and I would pick it up and go, wait a minute, the favorite artist, I don't know if they're like having an off day or an on day. So it took a while to figure out that there are certain teams that really work, that really pop.
There's a chemistry that begins to evolve, and again, because of a lot of the similar interests that we had early on, I guess you could probably define it as almost a house style. It was not intentional. It just happened to be that we were influencing each other so much that we would sort of pick up on each other's isms or our particular strengths.
You guys are rolling the same riffs.
Yeah, we're absolutely, yeah. and ironically, at some point, and I know you didn't mean it this way, and I don't take it this way, but I know it's at a certain level, a house style starts to become, almost something of a negative in that, oh, that's the only look that you guys can create. And so it didn't take more than a few years after this stuff before we started to consciously bring in other artists and other people and try to expand, because obviously the more diverse stuff that you can do, the different styles and the different approaches, it might cater to a different audience, it might cater to a different publisher, and you don't get pigeonholed into doing very specific things, and there's no expectation eventually that, oh, we wanted the house style. Well, we don't really do house styles. If you want Jim and me to ink it, if you want Jim to pencil it and me to ink it, okay, and you kind of know what you're going to get. But as far as the studio, we're trying to diversify ourselves and become adept at trying lots of different things, and keep expanding our horizons too. We're constantly.
You as an artist are also expanding and wanting to try new stuff, new equipment, because this is the other thing that's coming into the mix. For those of you that don't remember, one of the things that's also happening during the same period is actually there are these huge revolutionary advancements in publishing. I mean, with the kind of paper you can use, the kind of printing processes. So literally, a lot of the detail that you're able to go in on here, I mean, didn't exist.
It used to drive us nuts when I know this is fuzzy, but trust me, there's a lot of lines here, and it would drive us nuts when we were doing stuff for Marvel, and we could never seem to get the scanning of the line art dialed in, so that a lot of stuff would drop out. So literally, I'd spend hours and days and months and weeks putting in all these lines and or rendering techniques or styles or whatnot, and then it would get published, and then stuff would drop out, it'd get fuzzy, it just basically would crap out. And so about the time that just before Image started, we started going out and actually buying equipment, computers, scanners, and having things colored digitally and whatnot, trying to basically what you're talking about, like use technology to our advantage. At that point, we started having control over the final product, so that we knew that if we put in all this work, that there would actually, at the end of the day, when the thing is being published, it would show, that work would show on the printed page.
So they had
fidelity.
But this is one of the bugaboos kind of the field, because on the one hand, the house style that's happening with Image, whenever Image starts to emerge, on the one hand, that becomes something that, like, quite honestly, a lot of people want you to just keep doing, right? Like, keep doing the same thing. Like,
if it's not broke, don't fix it, kind of a thing.
And by the way, also don't fix it.
Right,
just
don't fix
give me more of that, right?
Give me more, yeah.
So that's actually kind of a double bind, because in some ways, this hits, it's getting attention. Like you say, Jim Lee's taking off. You're also inking multiple artists of this group.
Yeah, at this point, I'm doing 3. I was gonna say monthly, but our schedules.
You did more.
We did our schedules tend to fall apart a little bit. But anyways, I was working on Jim's Wildcats at this point. I was doing Will Portasio's Wetworks. I was doing Mark Silvestri's Cyberforce, and then at the same time we were doing crossover series with Valiant and other companies called Deathmate, right? Thank you, Tim. We were doing swimsuit editions. That was like all the rage.
Right.
Remember when all those swimsuit
editions? That's right.
Calendars were coming out? Well, we did.
You had some pinups.
And then I got married and started having children. So I'm juggling. Like, there's a lot of balls getting.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of juggling here.
Getting juggled in the air. So yeah, that was good times.
That's amazing. Because one of the things, like I just wanted to pop up here too. during this Image age, because they just had an anniversary. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
it was
mentioning-
25 years, yeah.
That's this year.
Yeah,
That's this
yeah.
year. Image Comics, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that kind of blows me away, and I know it's got to you too, because it's
Yeah.
like, how many, what?
Yeah.
What a hubba, what?
I try not to think about it.
No, right, no, I'm in denial.
Yeah.
But no, Image, this is the thing, Image also redefined the industry, and a lot of this had to do with, again, bringing in this kind of new approach and making possible
Well,
this.
yeah, a lot, again, from a technological standpoint, a lot of the stuff that we were doing, especially as far as coloring, anyone who buys comics now kind of takes for granted that a lot of the sophisticated coloring, that some of it you may like, some of it you don't. There's some stuff that is really extravagant that's out on the stands right now that I really like, and then some stuff that's just so over the top that it just muddies the artwork to the extent that it's almost unviewable to me. But all of the good stuff in between those extremes came out of our office, out of Homage Studios and then Wildstorm. All the technological advances that happened with computer coloring at that time that you take for granted now that for better or for worse is happening. That started at our studio, and to a large extent, I think that may be where we stand right now. That almost may be the biggest sort of almost badge of honor of what we created, but regardless of whatever books that we did that you liked, or the style of rendering that I did from a stylistic standpoint, or whatever Jim or Wilson or any of these guys did, where comics are right now, a lot of the coloring stuff, which I'm not involved in at all, so this has nothing to do with me, but that was very innovative and a big sort of technological step forward as far as the making of comics. Again, not content or editorial, but the actual what's in the nuts and bolts of making comics. That was big.
Just bringing it in.
And we didn't know at the time
You're
how
just playing
how
around
big
with tools, right?
Again, it was sort of like this natural progression. It was this natural evolution of comics, and also the fact that we were all younger and I'm not speaking for myself, but the people that had the studio going, they were not afraid of the technology. Whereas Marvel and DC in particular, both those companies, they're kind of set in their ways. They knew that there was a possibility of being able to do computer coloring to some extent, and then there were some other techniques, but that in particular, they were kind of on the fence, and so they lagged. And so we kind of took that mantle and rolled with it, to the point where when DC bought what became Wildstorm Comics, the biggest thing that they wanted, they had sort of two goals, I think, in buying Wildstorm Comics. One was you get Jim Lee, which is not a bad deal. And then the second thing was our coloring department, which was absolutely state of the art from the technological and personnel standpoint. So.
Yeah, no, but this is part of like a lot of the innovations that you brought to it. So just to switch gears real quick and just a couple more questions, then we'll take a beer break because everybody needs that. Talk about some of the legendary lines, some of the legends that you've gotten to work with. Who are some of your favorites? Were there some that were kind of a challenge? Or no, but there's also in a couple of interviews I've read where there are legends you wouldn't even touch. Bernie Wrightson, who just passed, actually.
Bernie Wrightson, I've been asked multiple times to ink Bernie Wrightson, who, bless him, just passed this last year, and mostly because, again, he was a guy who was an artist and was known to pencil and ink his own work throughout his entire career. On super rare occasions would have somebody ink him, but it was like a special occasion for various reasons. Anyways, he's the type of guy, and I don't know if you guys know his work, kind of very horror related, well known for Swamp Thing and Frankenstein. Anyways, he's a guy that I looked up to. He's one of my heroes. He was one of my artistic heroes, and still is. And
his Swamp Thing Batman team up was one of the most mind-blowing visually that I'd seen, because he brings both of those genres together in a way that makes them both work.
And he was so good that I felt like there was really nowhere that it could go if I got a hold of his pencil, but down. I mean, and I'm not. I think I have some skills. I've been doing this a long time. I'm pretty confident in what I do, but there are certain guys and Wrightson being one of them, honestly, there was nothing that I could have possibly done to improve or even experiment. As a fan, I would not want to I would not be a buying fan of any book that had Bernie Wrightson as the artist and had some inker guy, no matter how much you liked his work, experiment on Bernie Wrightson's pencils. It's just there's a certain reverence that I have for the level of perfection that this guy had. So yeah, he was always pretty intimidating. There's a lot of guys that I worked with that were really good. Some of them, oh yeah, I forgot. Neil Adams I was a big fan of, and still am a big fan of Neil Adams. Came to prominence in the late 60s, early 70s. Huge influence on me. Got a chance to do a Batman book with him. That was a mixed bag. I really enjoyed doing it. I poured everything that I had into that job. He sort of had, I mean, all artists, there are a ton of fans out there that think that believe, rightly or wrongly, that I had a peak, or that Jim Lee had a peak. Maybe we peaked in X-Men, and it's been downhill ever since.
Right? Oh my God.
Straight to hell. And Neil sort of had a prime period, and it was the late 60s to early to mid 70s, and that's kind of the stuff that I bought and read as a fan. So when I approached inking Neil on this Batman book, which came out probably 2006, 2007, something like that, that's when I was inking it. My approach was to go back and look at all of my favorite Neil Adams comics that got me inspired and wanting to do comics as a kid, and try and, as best I can, kind of emulate that line. Well, that was Neil Adams from 1972. Neil Adams in 2007, in his mind and in probably reality, is a different artist. So he's looking at what I'm doing, which has no bearing or relationship to what he's doing now. And I'd send pages in, pretty proud of myself, and he'd like start whiting out stuff and re-inking stuff. And knowing him and how he rolls, I wasn't like super surprised.
Right?
I'd kind of been warned this might happen, but I kind of was hoping he would see the light, or at least just let a fan inker have my little say, have a little ride.
But that's the double-edged sword of that
It's a
because he's also trying stuff.
He's
and
trying.
It doesn't always
stuff.
work. You know, I mean, it doesn't, because whatever the relative merits of this, I mean, this guy's a legend working on a legendary icon that he made legend.
Absolutely.
And he's running.
He's entitled.
Man, he's chasing the frisbee.
100% entitled to do things the way that he wants to do it, and it's my place to either try and do the best I can, or try and do it his way, or just bow out. And so I kind of tried to straddle it. And at some point he actually sort of acquiesced. He kind of ended up he kept the leash tight, but he kind of allowed me to do some stuff. So again, it was kind of a mixed bag in that I think I pleased him in some places. I think I pleased myself in other places, but I got a chance to do it. I got to try it. And that's a lot of what art and life is you just kind of try it, and you kind of hope that you'll land on your feet. And if you land on your ass, you'll live to fight another day.
And that's the weird thing that I would think about what you do, is also trying to figure out when to let them lead, or whenever you can step in and say, hey, let's try a few beats like this.
Yeah, no, it's always a line you're trying to straddle, and I've always got it in the back of my mind. And if anything, that's actually one of the things that can be paralyzing. If you're really worried too much about what the guy's intentions were, or how much he's going to judge you either for good or for bad on what you do, you will be paralyzed. You will be going out the blocks without any direction. So at some point, you kind of have to sort of trust your instincts and have some reverence for the work. I mean, the one thing I will say that probably saved me somewhat is that I wasn't looking to see how someone else might approach Neil. I looked to see how Neil approached Neil. And I would do the same thing with Jim or with anybody else that I work with. I would kind of see if they were inking themselves, or if there was something successful in past associations, how and why that was successful, and try and emulate it in some way, but also still maintain my own
and bring something to the
sense.
party.
Bring something to the party.
You got to entertain yourself too.
I've got to stay interested. If I'm not interested, or if I'm second guessing myself the whole way, we're not going anywhere.
Right on. So this is actually one of my favorite from the New 52. You and Jim Lee.
I like that one too.
Dude, all the different lines.
There's a lot of stuff I don't like that we do, but I like that one.
Dude, all the lines in this. I mean, like, I could do a master class just on the different types of lines, hashings, and shadowings.
But the thing is, and again,
it's mind blowing.
But there's a lot of people that are fans that don't like this, and it's because it is really rendered. It's really detailed. And actually, when I do my own drawing and my own work, it's way stripped down. It's much simpler. Jim and I we've kind of got this visual language where it's really detailed. It's really textured. There's just a lot of line work involved, and you can actually use that in a way to sort of help hide poor drawing. I don't think that's what we do,
Right.
and because I think Jim draws really well.
Some artists do, not to
there
name
are some
names,
artists that definitely do that.
It just looks like a train wreck. And
yeah.
speaking of which, here's some of your work.
Yeah,
Because that's what I find that's visually like fascinating about what you do, is because like you go back to like Scott McCloud and how he talks about the art of like cartooning is to use as few lines as possible to accurately, like where you have zero understanding of, like a misunderstanding rather. The idea is like you see it, it's clear what's going on, etc. But then now you get to pick where you add flavor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, put a little bam in there, as everyone says, right?
Yeah.
And so like some of your art, like your tribute to Eisner.
Will Eisner, the
Oh my
spirit
God,
down here on
yeah.
the left, and then this is like what a Dark Knight.
Who's that guy? Is that
down on the left-hand corner?
No, this
Dark
guy.
Knight. Yeah.
Like I don't recognize this guy. I'm kidding you. I'm
Oh,
sorry. I'm totally
like,
no.
really? That looks like Batman.
anybody here not
Holy
have
crap! I
fucking
completely
Batman?
up that drawing.
Sweet Jesus! Oh my God! You guys are killing me. Yeah, no, right. I'm like, that's Batfleck. And there's you with Jim.
Yeah, it's
and
me and Jim and Alex Sinclair are the guy who's been colored a lot of our stuff for years and years as well. Good buddy.
Right on. So that's a master in action, and so that's what we got for you. We're going to take a short break here for Nerd Night. Get everybody a chance to beer up. Please thank Scott Williams. Grab a beer.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for
That wasn't too painful.
No, good. That was the point, and that's why I offered to buy you a beer. I was like, dude, let me do this for you, right? So when we come back, actually, I'm going to ask Tim Stoltzfus, who owns More Fun Comics, to come up and join us, and we're actually going to talk about the Denton Batman. So let's take a break, let's beer up, and we'll be back. We have a few announcements, I think, do a little housekeeping for our upcoming Nerd Night. But give Scott a travel out, give him another clap on the way out. So yeah, take a break, let the doggy take a walk, whatever you guys need to do.
That's nice.
Can I take a picture with your dog?
Absolutely. You got a camera? Give me a camera. I'll take it. Now you know you're gonna get like covered in fur here. So.
I love puppies.
Hold on.
Can you sit down?
Let's see.
Okay.
You know, yeah. Give me to your camera, and then I'll do it.
It's my toddler.
There we go.